Recording in progress.
All right, welcome to the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission on Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. This is a hybrid meeting occurring both virtually on Zoom with the Zoom link at the top of the agenda and in person at Village Hall. We're also on our YouTube channel. It is 6:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted. So we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, public appearances is the public's opportunity to speak. We'll open it up to individuals in the room and then anyone else on Zoom. Ask that you state your name, address, and then limit your comment to 3 minutes. If there anyone in the room that would like to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? Okay. Move on to number 5, discuss and consider the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting on March 11th, 2026, and those minutes are linked in the agenda.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Alex is the motion, second by Don.
Second.
Oh, sorry, Kim, you were
Yeah.
out-seconded on this one. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Number 6, discuss and consider a request for a 0 lot line application to split a duplex parcel.
Yeah, so pretty straightforward. We have these every so often, someone looking to either split or join a lot. In this case, they are doing a split. The only conditions we'd recommend are the typical ones, recording the maintenance agreement with the Register of Deeds, and then just a note that they'll also need approval from the Utility Commission. Utility was canceled today, so they'll have to come back and get that at a later date.
Any comments or questions?
Just one. I looked at this map this weekend, but then just now, maybe it's the environment. I remember we had the conversation on this parcel before, maybe? Was it the permit probably to build way back when? Or,
It wouldn't have been to build it because a single family or a duplex wouldn't come
It's already
to
approved,
us.
yeah. Maybe not then.
It's possible they joined it, now they're splitting it again, I don't recall. There are some that go back and forth.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, can you turn your mic on? Sorry. Uh-oh.
Thanks. So they have the letter from the plumber, which is the other thing required, that they have separate utilities, so that's good too. I'll make a motion and get back to it here. Make a motion to recommend approval of a 0 lot line application to split one existing duplex parcel located at 1125 and 1127 North Parkview into 2 parcels with staff conditions.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Don, second by JP. Any other discussion on the lot line application? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We'll move on to a presentation, and we'd invite you.
So we have the professor, we don't have the students.
Okay.
But John Higgins, he's been here before in his role with CARPSI, but he's also a lecturer at UW in the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture, and he's presenting some student work that was done here in the Door Creek watershed.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for allowing me to join you this evening. I'm going to try to share my screen here if I can find the Zoom window again. Let's see how well this works. All right. All right. Well, this is looking better. Here we go. All right. So now you should probably be seeing things other than the Zoom window here. Yeah? People online seeing that slide deck by chance? So it is. Look at that. As Aaron mentioned, I'm Sean Higgins. I am here wearing a couple of hats this evening, both as a employee of the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, where I've been working for the past, I think, dozen or more years at this point, and as Aaron mentioned, a lecturer of late in the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture. And as he mentioned in the intro, I'm here to present an idea, to talk to you about a concept and the design studio that I instructed this past fall at the UW. So first, a little bit about CARPC. We're one of 9 regional planning commissions in the state. Most planning commissions deal in one or several of these 4 areas: land use and planning, water quality planning, economic development, and transportation planning. We focus primarily on land use planning and water quality management. A lot of what we do and a lot of what I do is work with communities in collaborative long-range planning, as well as providing area communities with planning assistance, mapping assistance, data, things like that. The reason I bring this up is because it's sort of baked into this idea that I wanted to present to you today, as represented by our students' work. I'm the principal instructor for a couple of classes, but like I said, I had the honor of running a design and planning workshop this past fall for Bachelor of Landscape Architecture students, as well as Masters of Urban Planning students. One of the things that was emphasized in that course is how regional planning is conducted. Too often in site planning or in planning generally, we get a little bit myopic and we put on our blinders and we focus on the effects of what is done, what is built at a site level. But regional planning doesn't really work that way. It crosses boundaries, it crosses jurisdictions, and quite frankly, a lot of the systems that we deal in don't give a rip where the arbitrary boundaries that we have designated exist. One of those really good examples, a classic example, is watersheds, is water. Water runs downhill, water follows the topography. It does not care where the village ends and a town begins. And so that, as well as a couple of other points, were things that we emphasized in this studio course. Negotiated outcomes are a must. I'm sure you're all familiar with, have dealt with things like annexation petitions, and been involved in or heard of controversy and butting of heads between incorporated municipalities and towns, largely to do with this notion of an extraterritorial jurisdiction, an ETJ, a buffer off of the current corporate limits of a community, where those communities are asked to plan for future development should they expand into those areas. But one of the problems with that is that those ETJs, conceptually, tend to overlap one another. Now, yes, there are provisions in statute for how you would work that out, how you would split who owns which area. But really, this is all beside the point because we're talking about systems that don't align, that don't adhere to those boundaries. Natural systems, economies, transportation systems, things like that. One of the other points to emphasize in that studio was that collaboration now, like right now, prevents conflict and regrets later on. In that image, I'm showing you the advance of development since 1970, so 30 years, 20 years into the future, Madison gets a little closer. In 2010, a little closer. At the same time, Cottage Grove, Sun Prairie, all expanding, all converging or meeting in the middle there. What was formerly rural area, dotted with as shown here, environmental corridors, or areas that, were those lands to be developed, would be required to be placed in environmental corridors for protection due to the presence of water resources or other such things. And so if we're interested in planning for those areas, really the best time to be doing that was 30 years ago. And so the clock is ticking as communities progress further, grow, and develop beyond their borders. And another reality that this studio dealt with was, well, frankly, everyone can't have everything they want all the time. Budgets are tight. Creative solutions are what we need. We need things to serve double, triple, quadruple duty when they're implemented. And that notion is something that's baked into a concept like ecosystem services. So ecosystem services could be anything that we derive from a system, a natural system. So those things like crops, timber, fresh water. It serves a regulating purpose as well. Soil erosion prevention, flood regulation, water purification. And then it also serves cultural function, recreational uses, the scenic benefit, the sense of identity that we get from those landscapes. I think in Wisconsin, we all probably relate in one way or another to rolling hills, green pastures, milk cows, right? And I think in the Madison area, part of the identity is that high-quality cropland are those ample recreational outdoor activities that we benefit from in this area. And so we really narrowed in on looking at those multi-benefits offered by ecosystem services. Now, obviously, as I'm wearing my CARPSI hat with my interest in water quality, one of those ecosystem services, one of those systems that we're looking at is water, is stormwater specifically. So stormwater is anything, rain, meltwater, things coming out of the sky, hits constructed or natural areas, runs downhill, ends up in streams, lakes, ponds, much of it ending up in the Gulf of Mexico. And I probably don't need to belabor the point about the impacts of unmanaged stormwater, polluted surfaces, flooding, and so on. These are things that are protected currently within law. We currently look for control of how much water there is, how much junk the water is carrying with it as it runs into those channels, silt, dirt, those sorts of things. How much of it is staying put, replenishing the groundwater aquifers, what temperature it's at, if we're interested in things like cold water fisheries, trout, for example, within the western part of Dane County. And then finally, oil and grease, things that are on asphalt or on concrete surfaces that get flushed into water bodies. And while those things are regulated, one thing that is very concerning is the future of what storms look like for us. Increasing rainfall frequency and severity is going to be a major problem. What this map here is illustrating is a 2-inch rainfall. That is a significant rainfall. Just for frame of reference, statistically something that happens once a year, possibly less. And of late, and projected into the future, is this shift towards more greater occurrence of those really high volume storms. If you pair this with the rate of development and the decreasing of impervious, or the decrease of pervious area where stormwater can get into the ground, where it's not causing these flooding issues or sweeping away quality soils. You notice that once we get to the point where we've got 75 to 100% impervious surface in any given area, we're not seeing quite as much of that infiltrating into the soils, much less into the groundwater aquifers, or evaporating off. And so the water that's running off those sites is quite a lot. So best management practices for stormwater planning dictate that we take a look at multiple levels of analysis, do planning at the site level to manage runoff with things like rain gardens, do things at the neighborhood level, like paying attention to the tree canopy there, and then at the regional level, looking at things like watersheds. So through these mitigation efforts, we're able to flatten that curve there. What that is showing you is a very steep peak after storm starts, lots and lots of water that then trails off in that blue line there. The pre-development conditions shown in black there, obviously a lot easier to manage, not as much flooding potential there. With current controls, you're looking at that sort of red line that's there. So a little bit more attenuated, takes place over a longer amount of time, not quite as flashy, not as much volume. But really where we want to be is that post-development with LDI, which is low impact development / GI green infrastructure. So allowing native planting and things like the stormwater garden to soak up some of that water. At a regional level, this isn't a new concept. The idea of communities surrounded and connected by green belts is something that's been around for over 100 years. You might be familiar with Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Boston. All of these places have master planned long-range development of, in the case of Boston and I think Minneapolis, what are called green necklaces. These networks of environmental corridors following riparian paths, connecting hubs, things like parks, other outdoor recreational areas. Like I said, this greenway idea is over 100 years old at this point and still kicking. There's modern implementation of these sorts of practices even to this day. And certainly Madison has a great example in the Nine Springs E-Way, the Lewis Nine Springs E-Way. 7 miles of environmental corridor and trail system. It's connecting marsh, sedge meadow, prairie, woodlands, and a number of the county and city of Madison and Fitchburg parks. It's also linked up to a lot of the bike trail systems in the area. And in fact, this is something that's been delineated in long-range plans in the Dane County area since the 70s. This image here was one I as we were cleaning out our office, I found. So it's been on the books for quite some time. On to the student work. So this is just one of the groups within the studio, their work looking at the Door Creek watershed. So this showing you where it is in relationship to Cottage Grove in the upper right corner there. Door Creek eventually discharges into Lake Kaganza, but along the way it's connected to a number of assets like parks and some existing trails that run throughout this area and sort of crisscross the rural areas outside of Madison and Cottage Grove. In their mapping and in the project that I'm showing you here, they were interested in finding what a workable path would look like for a trail system that connected multiple communities, that was connecting these park systems, these bike and walking paths. Part of the consideration here is areas that are wetlands, shown on the left there in the greens, and areas where flooding is more or less likely, shown there in the blue tones. Through their work, which I believe I saw was presented or given to you in the packet, I'd urge you to take a look at those. One of the things they looked at was a land acquisition plan to determine where the pinch points or pain points are. Things like railroad crossings or street crossings, the sort of must acquire parcels in this area if one were interested in creating this sort of regional greenway to serve both those cultural ecosystem service functions as well as the mitigating ones, things like protecting soil runoff from entering the riparian corridors, things like delaying stormwater from reaching those channels as well. And their ultimate alignment of that path sort of shown here. I'd urge you to look at the packet and zoom in there to see more of the details. But this was what they came up with in the end. The ownership along this hypothetical greenway is about 138 parcels long. Door Creek alone is running through about 107 of those parcels. And land along the proposed trail route to create this continuous greenway, about 38 of those are either currently owned by the county or City of Madison or Village of Cottage Grove, or the towns that exist in those areas. So 32% of the total acreage in this greenway in total, and about 4 miles worth of that corridor. So I won't take much more of your time, but to say that this is something that is a notion, this is an idea, this is not a plan that is necessarily going to happen without involvement of multiple parties. So to quote Daniel Burnham, make no small plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood, and themselves will probably not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram, once recorded, will never die, but long after we are gone, will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency. Remember that our sons, daughters, and granddaughters are going to do things that will stagger us. Let your watchword be order and your beacon beauty. What I think he's trying to say is, once something's recorded on a plan as a passable idea, it gets legs, it gains traction, and it can go somewhere. So steps that the village can take at this point: talk with your neighbors, look at the long-range plans. Are there places where those plans are in alignment, where they agree with one another? Could your plans make reference to other people's plans, indicating where those assets like parks, trail systems are planned in those communities? How could those systems here within the village link up with that broader regional network of trails and greenways? So thanks for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I understand if you want to get on with your night and get to the next agenda item.
Yeah, who has questions?
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Appreciate it, Alex. I actually got the first question for once. So I really do appreciate the thoroughness of the project and what they've done, and I say this as a fellow educator in higher education. So one of the questions I had is, did the students who are part of this group consider the Glacial Drummond Connector Trail project? Because that is slated to go from the existing path, which now kind of goes to Bach, and then it just got approval to do the Highway 3990 pass that will eventually make its way this way, and it does intersect with the watershed, and in particular the River Creek.
Yeah, so Not all of the groups focused on this idea of a greenway, but the groups that did, I think there were 2 or 3, if I'm remembering correctly, they should have paid attention to that and considered it. But yeah, that's definitely one of the considerations. Things like the Glacial Drumlin, like the Cannonball Trail, like the Badger State Trail, like the Military Ridge Trail, all of those networks are things that really I was hoping that they would take a look at. You know, that whole point about not having blinders on and just being focused on the site, but really considering the up and downstream effects of that system beyond the jurisdiction that you're looking at in particular.
Okay, so I reviewed the students' stuff this weekend, and and then your presentation gave me some additional thoughts. So, a conversation piece, which is really what this is a little bit. One of the projects we talked about the river and how things have shifted because of human intervention. We've moved things around, this, that, and the other thing. And so then I think about like some of our developments. We have a farmland, and it rains on it. You had the picture, right? It all kind of stays there. And so then we build on it, and we build a retention pond, basically saying, hey, the impervious calculation and what's on the land you got to keep. So that's a very small view of that watershed. Mm-hmm. Is there a conversation? It wouldn't work for every parcel. It depends on how far you are away from the waterway, but that we would look maybe at a bigger addition to that calculation and say, hey, we actually need to let more of it out faster because you're closer or you're not. I mean, it'd be a difficult calculation, right? But it's a different thing to discuss because some of the intervention that we've done starves water in other areas of the stream, the creek, the river, whatever. But then we're actually intentionally holding water back that we could let through. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there's a conversation piece in there. And so it was a good talk about how we've sort of, I don't want to say screwed things up, but changed things. Because then I was also like, hey, this is really good where they're trying to protect it, make this corridor. I guess the second piece, random thoughts. And then here's things we can do to jumpstart a correction. And then I was also thinking like, we'll just leave it alone for the next 100 years. And it'll auto-correct maybe, but we need to jumpstart things. So that sort of makes sense too. But anyway, and I have one more after that, but if you have a thought on that water retention pond calculation and how there's an influence there.
I am not the stormwater engineer, and so I'll tread lightly and hopefully not get
as I did with my question. Yes, fair.
With my colleagues. There's been more emphasis, from what I can tell, in the profession to look at those sort of soft systems, things like native vegetation or areas that can be flooded periodically to deal with that increased stormwater volume due to climate change. And so I think that's one point there. I think emphasizing also in rural areas where stormwater stay-on requirements are not being regulated, working with people that own land, that work land, to invest in planted buffers, things like that, in those dam spots at the edges of fields, because frankly, that's an investment in their bottom line as well. Soil health being the thing that drives productivity and yield of their crops. So washing that world-class soil downstream, obviously not in our best interest.
We've experienced that actual thing happening in the village as well. The other question that I sort of had was philosophies around land acquisition, and that tends to have a negative, oh, you're taking my land. Right. So is there, have you seen other conversations where there's an incentivized, like, hey, you keep your land, but we want to dedicate this, and in order for us to dedicate this, we'll help incentivize you with tax breaks, or whatever, we'll put your name on the wall. Instead of actually acquiring land, bring that owner as a steward to that space as opposed to land acquisition, and now it's a bird, Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, programs like purchase of development rights and transfer of development rights have been used in a lot of instances successfully, sort of to this point. So it's not acquiring land, it's allowing those landowners to realize some economic benefit from urban development by saying, okay, the one unit of development I could have developed here, we're going to transfer that somewhere else and allow someone, closer to, say, transportation networks or the edge of where that rural urban interface is to, develop there. So, getting a little bit of return on that. I think a lot of these areas here, and what some of the maps are pointing out, is that much of that land is not or would not be developable anyway.
Right.
And so educating now and thinking about those areas at this point to get ahead of things so that multiple parties are coordinating on it to sort of piece together this larger system is, I think, the order of the day.
Thank you.
Sean, it's nice to see you in Cottage Grove.
Hi.
So my question is, I guess, about our comprehensive plan update, which we're going to start interviewing. We had an RFP for updating our comp plan, so the village board's going to start interviewing next month for this update. So this seems like the kind of thing we might want to, re-look at and revisit. Perhaps talk to peers as we, or, our neighbors as we look at updating these plans. Have you seen some examples of how we might collaborate with, talking about land use with your neighbors is sometimes a challenging thing, and
Definitely.
I think but collaborating around something like we have this
Right.
resource that crosses boundaries that we all value might be a good starting point. I guess incorporating that with our comprehensive plan update might be logical. Do you have any thoughts, examples, words of wisdom, advice as we start that?
I think it's really something that boils down to finding common ground or common issues. I think in a lot of the towns there's a really earnest effort to work on preserving those farming areas that are of the highest quality soils. And oftentimes there's this sort of tension between develop it or keep it as farming, because both of those conditions, like land that's cleared, like lands that's sort of flat but drains, land that will percolate water into the groundwater. So I don't know that it's a this or that sort of thing. I think that looking at the neighbors' comprehensive plans and really trying to incorporate the good elements from those plans, where they've highlighted areas of farmland preservation or the assets that they have, and sort of looking for places where you can work with those other entities. I feel like going back to my slide with the two birds here, thrilling multiple birds with one scone, which I don't recommend because I've heard that feeding flour to refined flour to birds is really not great for them. But
Maybe we could have that in our background if we have discussions with our neighbors. Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions? I guess one thing I've learned is that government is pretty slow. So what advice do you tell your students in your class? They spend this whole semester working on a project like this, but what's the expectation on feasibility, and can you expect?
I think planning is not for somebody who's impatient. One of the first things I say is if you are loving the new bus rapid transit system in Madison, thank planners from 40 years ago, because it was on the books at that point being considered as an option for managing traffic congestion and ridership and population growth and all of those things at that point. As it's not quite as glorious as being the person that, you know, like Burnham, that gets their stamp on something that gets built. I think the notion that we all stand on the shoulders of people that came before us, you know, we all sort of collectively give one another a running shove, you know, into the future.
Well, thank you for coming tonight and presenting
Thanks for
to
having
us.
me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to move on to number 8, concept presentation from Linda R. for 162 units, single-family home developments. I invite you up, and you can sit or stand. Just make sure you turn the microphone on.
How about that? Thanks. Hi, I'm Rick Murphy from Lennar Homes with Reed Bianucci, our land acquisition manager. And we have met with staff a few times. So we're talking about the Uphoff Farm, which is about a half-mile east of Main Street on Ridge Road. And we like to just have an introductory discussion about ourselves, our company, us, and you know, some ideas we had to build a single-family home community in that neighborhood. So we're contract purchaser on the property at this point. And just a little background on our company. We have been in the area, and I don't know if we have some slides to match what I have in my hand. Aaron, I think, do you have a is it a PowerPoint or a PDF? Oh, there it is. Okay. Maybe jump to slide number 2 for just a second. So we are one of the largest home builders in the country, number 2, I think, right now, about 75,000 homes a year. We're publicly traded. And in our division, we work between Illinois, Wisconsin, and Northwest Indiana. So our division built about 19 and closed about 1,900 homes last year. So we're working in about 50-something communities. We have a mortgage company. Most people take our mortgages because we have a great deal. We usually buy down the mortgages. I think currently we're buying them down to like 4.9% for the first year, and is it 5.9? 4.9, and then 5.9 for the rest of the traditional loan period. You know, our land development team has built, last year we built about 16 miles of roadway, and 2,500 home sites, something on that order. And I'm not trying to impress anybody by our size, but it is financial stability that comes from that. I've been here 8 years. And we started, when I started, we were taking defunct communities that other builders failed on, and because we're publicly traded, we remained in business. We didn't lose our properties to the banks, and we were able to work with communities like yourselves and bring everything back to life and finish things where towns had lost letters of credit and everything else, and we just kind of sat down with the folks and said, what do you need? And let's figure it out, and we did. That's how we kind of were doing it about 8 years ago. Now, we're definitely doing kind of an even flow kind of building. We very confident we know our market, how we're going to sell homes, and we start and build homes on a regular basis, maybe 3 or 4 a month, solid. And by the time the home is sold or completed, it's been sold. So very steady flow there for the building reviewers, the inspectors, and everything else, and also for our trade partners. Trade partners get to, you know, the diggers get to stay, and the plumbers and carpenters, and they just get to move down the block and very efficiently. It's good for our purchasers as well, because they get to benefit from, I think we get better pricing as a result of that. You know, we come in a community like this, we can tell the trade partner, you're doing all the quartz countertops in the community, not just 5 as an option. That was the other thing I was going to mention. Our homes will typically have have standard features that a lot of places are upgrades. Quartz countertops, vinyl plank floorings, 42-inch cabinets, deluxe double bowl sink, glass shower enclosures in the main bath, and so in the owner suite, so forth. Kind of wanted to go through that a little bit. That's us. But more importantly, can we jump to that? We sent you an email with the site plan. This is it right here, and we'll start here to begin with. We tried to come up with a plan that kind of goes with the terrain up there, and a little bit of features that I think some of the planning staff had shown an interest in seeing on our plans. 162 home sites, which really is about, I think, 124 on the north side, and you'll see up there we've got a park in there, and we're working in some bike path, or what do you call that, multi-use path that comes across the community, and I think I'll have to point it out to you from east to west, and then it comes down along the west side, along the existing homes there, and kind of in recognition of the path that you have down there, just south of this property. So eventually, be contiguous with the path that's already there. So, and then let's maybe. And if you have questions on that plan, I do have a better picture that we sent in to Aaron there, and we can talk about it. Maybe let's jump up ahead a couple. Product, how we handle homes. This is just the site location map. Everybody knows where this is, right? Good. Okay, good. Okay, how we handle homes and what we call diversity or anti-monotony. We have basically on every one of these homes, we have 3 or 4 elevations, and they actually all look different. And we maybe add on, change masonry, change the elevation, roof lines, and everything. So we have got a couple ranches that we're thinking about. Now this product is in development, so it'll probably change, but we'll be along the similar lines here. So we've got a couple ranch homes ranging from 1,800 feet to about 2,200 feet. Our homes are generally 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2 or 3 car garages. 2-story homes will range from about 2,100, 2,200 square feet up to about 2,900 square feet. And on that 2,900, you'll get into a 3-car garage to be included. And maybe just jump to the next couple slides. It's really, I think, yeah, I forgot to mention a few communities we've been working on locally. Windsor Crossing in Windsor, which is not on this list. The reserves in Sun Prairie, we built over there by Token Creek School. Highlands in Netherwood in Oregon. Meadows of Kettle Park West, just west of downtown there. Cardinal Heights is actually a new one. We picked up a few home sites in Columbus, east of here. Cardinal Estates is actually in Sauk City. So that's back quite a bit west. And so, what else did I have? I thought we'd built somewhere else. No, I think we got them all. But so we have some, we've been in here in the neighborhood for probably at least 4 years, I think. We have some aerial shots coming up, I think, for just some of the neighborhoods that we did work in, if you want to skip to the next slide. That's the last page you have? Okay. I have a couple more pages. But anyway, it's just some aerial shots. I think it's, we're not here necessarily to, to come get architecture approved or anything like that. It's more about having a discussion with you about the site plan features and to get your input and feedback and, collaborate a little bit. So, and I think maybe that's time if you can pull up either the first site plan or the one that we tried to email you tonight. That didn't come in. Okay. All right. Maybe you can. go up to the previous page maybe, and then we'll just zoom in the best we can. So I think at this point, mainly I just wanted to point out the couple of parks here, which is hard for you probably to mesh with what you got on your screen. But in the middle here, north of that central detention, a couple of paths, and we usually spend some real money in there. We would definitely work with the planning folks on how that looks and what's included. Usually we have a nice tot lots, and then we might have a different theme on the other park on the other side, something a little bit different. And again, take advantage of that open space. So the typical home site width on the north side, I think, was 65 foot wide, and on the south side, just I think the way the math worked out was about 55 feet. Now our typical home is the two-car garage home is about 40 feet wide. So that would leave about 15 feet total side yard after that, and then so like 7.5 feet on each side. And then on the north, 50-foot home is a three-car garage, basically. And that would require a little bit bigger home site, so that's why we have some 55-foot wide home sites. So with that, I'd like to open it up. Any questions, comments, ideas, from the commission and staff? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and look for your input and hopefully support.
Aaron, do you have anything you want to add at this point? First, before Alex talks.
No, we're mostly just here to get feedback from you guys at
Okay.
this point.
Go ahead, Alex.
What's the biggest headwind for your company in 2026?
The biggest headwind?
Biggest headwind, yeah, broad question. We've had a couple people come in, look at this parcel, and
Yeah.
there are challenges, as you said, and this is something you guys step into.
Yeah.
What's your biggest headwind?
We've seen this
to
property
execution?
before, yeah. And I think that, I think, initially we were, a lift station sewer service in the area was, I think at its early stages of consideration and discussion with the planning, local planning and possible development. So I see that it's a fairly big deal, and I think we're willing to work to help make that happen, and we can come to terms on that. And I think that was probably the biggest reason. I think we're probably a little more immune to the minor ups and downs and market changes as a publicly traded company. It seems to be really important to keep our sales momentum going for not only for the company but for our trade partners. That does help, and having our own mortgage company sustain sales where a small builder probably couldn't. They'd have a lot of ups and downs with the interest rates that you see fluctuating. I don't think that the interest rates, at 6.5%, I don't think anybody really expects them to go back to where they were 3 or 4 years ago at 2.8 or whatever it was. That's a remarkable time for rates. So, I think really our headwinds are getting things entitled fast enough to keep up with home sales. And I think particularly around here, affordability is a problem, and it's very difficult to sell homes, or sell and build homes under $400,000 or $500,000 is a challenge. So I think I think one of the ones we mentioned in Kettle Park West in Stoughton, I think we're hitting in the 400s. If we it's very price sensitive. If we're off by a few $1,000s, you can tell sales just change drastically. Very sensitive. So we're aware of that. We do, like I said, we do start homes regularly, and we do what it takes to sell those homes and not keep them on the market. There's a certain amount of dynamic pricing that happens to make that happen, and I think it's just like we just look at it pragmatically from a long-term business standpoint. We also look, relationships are important to us. with our trade partners, with our community leaders, and staff that we work with. We want to be the guys that they welcome us back. So I don't know if that's too long
Yeah,
or too short of
that's
an
perfect.
answer for you, but that's what I see. My biggest challenge here is just trying to keep up with what we're doing. Like I said, we're working in 50-something communities up between here and southeast Wisconsin, Kenosha County and Racine County. We've got probably 6, 8, 10 communities in progress right now, various stages of planning and development.
If you haven't heard it already, you'll hear the words traffic study.
Yeah.
So
we're used to it.
how can you help expedite or get those numbers so that we can have good conversations with our community around traffic impacts?
Yeah, traffic studies, nothing we're not used to. So we've been doing this a long time. I've been in the business over 30 years, and it's just one of the things we're used to. So that being said, the traffic studies, I look at it and. Look at it here. I don't expect anything strange to come out of a traffic study, but it definitely is a community planners. You need to be armed with the information when people call, because when you hear people come and object, they might object to traffic or drainage or this or that, and we want to make sure that we can reassure them. I mean, we will, definitely support the village engineering or the engineering consultant, and make sure we have, and I'm sure it's probably an item in your subdivision ordinance, probably. So none of that surprises us.
You mentioned that you have a lot of projects going on. What would you anticipate the pace of development to be in this project specifically?
Good question. I maybe defer to Reed here, but really this is 163, I think, out of the box. My initial assumptions would be probably 3 to 5 a month, maybe. So we're talking 60. This is probably a 2 to 3 year turnaround from the first building permit. Land development wise, you're probably talking 6 months to get your first phase down on the ground, something like that. So that's very typical. Market conditions might change that.
So that pace is a lot more rapid than I think we normally see in Cottage Grove.
Yeah, I understand.
Like
I'm
on
not
a-
here
on
to
a
scare you.
regular-
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of more of an average. The startups tends to be a lot slower because it's the first people in, it's not as pretty as it's going to take a little while to get the parks done and get the homes started. So typically what we might do is, if you get a spring start, you get models started by, in the fall, and then the start is not as fast as I make it sound. It takes a little while, but, definitely, I would expect at least probably 3 a month, up and down a little bit, but not a lot.
And I think to piggyback off, obviously, traffic study, but the neighborhood study and, or neighborhood meetings will happen and all incorporated in our development process, but that's down the line.
Yeah, and I think, one of the nice features of the plan, and I think I don't know if this came as a result of discussion with staff and recommendations, and we kind of got a little bit of a greenway in there with a little path that I think, will help. I think really helps with that issue,
Yeah, I appreciate the buffer between existing neighborhoods and new neighborhood. It'd be interesting to get, neighborhood feedback too on what they feel that bike path, if that's something that they're enthusiastic about or not. But I put that on the list.
Well, we just thought it would be nice. We don't need to do it, but we thought it would be nice because you've got, 300
I guess my
feet
question
away,
is,
got
where
one.
does the bike path go to? Because
Well,
the
I thought there
Drumlin
was
Trail
another
is
bike
further
path to
south.
right here down. Isn't there one down across here? They're all like an old railroad right away or something. Is that what that is?
There's wetland, I think, right? And
It would align with
It's not
the
that far.
parcel for the lift station, so the village could extend it on the
Okay.
lift station site if we choose to do that, and then could route back through the neighborhood and down to Glacial Drumlin.
I guess that's something I'd like to see feedback on,
Yeah.
further down the
Sure.
line. Heidi, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of building off that, and with the required neighborhood meeting, if they want to see a berm between the properties and the bike path, or, I think something like that might be worth conversation. I do like that then that creates an additional buffer between the new built houses and the existing homes. So to have that greenway with a bike path, but then I think that transition piece will be important to the neighborhood that's there. So I like the way it started. So just their feedback on that. And then on the pace and timing, something that's been brought up in the past is you may have heard about another connection out. And I see that you have the streets built to the property line to the north. So depending on how the village could help facilitate that, would you be willing, like, what's your plan for the phasing? Where would you start? Would you be, consider building so we can make another connection out, like starting there? Or did you have a vision of where this development kind of needs to start its build out?
Good question. I suspect that road that does eventually wind up to the north could be part of the first phase. And I don't expect a lot of phasing here. I mean, maybe 2 phases. Logically, a lot of times it follows utility constraints, those kind of things. But a lot of that, of course, would depend on the neighbor's interest in developing, But I don't think that we would be the ones holding anything up.
Okay, great, thank you. The other question I had was about your own mortgage company.
Yeah.
Do you take then like bids on a house that's listed, or the first person that offers what you're asking and qualifies is the person that gets the contract?
Yeah, we work real hard to qualify people, and everybody's free to go, shop with their own mortgage company and everything else. So we just happen to offer a very good deal. So I think 90 or 95% of people take one. I have one, and I use them. Just such a good deal. But as far as home sales go, it's come in and. Timing is everything, sure. I think, and there's promotions out there all the time, and like I said, we are very interested in getting people into homes that they love. So,
yeah,
it's probably more fun than buying a car.
Well, hearing the something in the 400,000s, which sounds, if you have a different frame of reference, like that sounds like a lot, but currently
it is a lot.
In the current
and this
date, if we can get something in the 400,000s, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to defer. I think Rita's run the numbers. So basically, what we're doing, the sheets that we're missing on your thing is it looks like we're projecting low 5s here. I wish we could do lower, but.
Yeah, I mean, with infrastructure costs, land costs.
Well, the land development, I think, we talk about affordability. That's one of the hardest drivers, because we have, and I respect I think the quality of land development is way up here from what it was 20, 30 years ago. But when you have, it's almost like when you figure out your costs for land development and for per home site, it almost is directly related to how many lineal feet of street frontage you have, how wide the roads are. One of the particular costs that we see that really drives it up is utilities down the middle of the street. You have to dig it, fill it with stone, and that's, it adds up. So it's funny because I think since probably since I started, the developed home site cost has gone up at least, which, I mean, not since I started way back, but in the last 7 or 8 years, it's gone up at least 50%. So it's a lot. You know, things like what's going on now with tariffs and uncertainties, that doesn't help, you know. So material costs, we get these calls, well, you know, pipe prices are going up because of oil and what have you. So we're always interested in working with communities and their engineers to value engineer, you know, because that's all gets passed on to the consumer, you know, our home buyer, you know, and we'd rather not. We'd rather give them as good a deal as we could and just keep selling homes and, you know, so thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I think you got a nice plan here. I don't think anyone objects to that. Your pushback's gonna be the traffic on Taylor Street. I don't know, back in the 2000s, a similar really nice plan came through, and it got held up because of not having a road through to Highway BB. And then last month, we had a talk about the school district combining 2 schools right up the end of Taylor Street and Main Street, the Cottage Grove School, which is going to add some more traffic at peak times. So the big pushback here is all going to be with the traffic going on to Taylor Street without an outlet to BB. But I think no one is really going to, I think you got a nice plan, so the fact of the development and the houses and all that, I think you've done a really nice job, but your pushback's going to be traffic.
I understand, and that's very common. That is why we do it. And I think we do need to arm your consulting engineer, or I don't know if you have a consultant, right? With that information. And I mean, I kind of like noticed that you said you're combining schools. Is that because enrollment is down from before? We see that a lot. We're seeing a lot of enrollment down significantly from what it was 15 or 20 years ago. And in a way, that helps. You know, a lot of times, you know, back 20 years ago, people were worried about keeping up because, the amount of home sites and homes that were getting built in the early 2000s was crazy. It was really unsustainable. And you know, schools all built up for it, and then here we are, believe it or not, you know, they're down, some of these school districts are down in some schools 40 or 50% from what they were, right? I don't know do you know what they were seeing over there?
The elementary schools are about 50% capacity, so that's where they're
Yeah.
coming right now.
So
So the big
that's not bad, you know?
the big intersection, so the Taylor and Wheelbridge and intersection is the only way to your subdivision.
Yeah, I
So it would
understand.
be, we do have the school district that's going to be performing a traffic impact analysis at the intersection in the next a month or so. And it would be nice to be able to integrate their findings with
Yeah.
if this were to move forward, with, you know, your traffic findings, so that we can make the most informed decisions on not only the intersection,
course.
but I think traffic calming along Taylor would be important too. We have obviously a lot of pedestrian, bike traffic, as well as cars that maybe are going a little too fast right now. And so
Yeah,
adding
can I
more
ask
traffic
how
in
wide,
there.
Yeah, can I ask how wide Taylor is right now? Does anybody know? No, I know what you're talking about.
Well, it narrows, right, when you get past Heather Drive there. And
Yeah.
it's more
I mean,
of a rural
sometimes when
road
these
going
roads
out.
get too big, you know, that's why you start seeing the speeders, you know, because it feels like you can go fast.
And so I think that's
You
something
know.
that the village is going to, you know, hopefully we're going to look at in order to make, you know, improvements to this area.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about traffic calming, I start to think about recommending actually narrower streets. This slows people down. You get bigger, terraces and those kind of things. So it feels. I mean, I used to live in a town. I think the streets, and it was an old, downtown area, like an old school, 24 feet wide. People stopped, waited for the guy, and nobody got mad, and it really slowed it down, and it was all fine. Not on your collectors, of course, but that's kind of, a big change from what was going on in the early 2000s when all the communities were zoning. We want bigger home sites. We want 85-foot, 12,000 square foot home sites. And nobody can afford it anymore. We would much rather dedicate the open spaces to community areas and parks and those kind of things where people feel, instead of getting on their lawnmower and then driving around, putting it in the garage, closing the door and going inside, they, hang out in their neighborhood, and ride their bikes downtown and go get ice cream or something.
This question is more directed towards Aaron. So one of the things as part of the comprehensive plan that we are doing is really looking at our housing chapter. So we have a committee that's been looking at it. And one of the things that was brought up during that was lot size, the width. Because our current ordinance, I was trying to look it up and I lost it on my computer, so I apologize for that. But I'm almost positive our lot widths without a PUB would not accommodate the proposed widths.
It's not a surprise.
55, 65. Now,
Yeah.
I say that, saying that that's something we have identified as part of the chapter, but our current ordinance, I believe, does not allow it without a PUB.
Yeah, I'd have to double check off the top of my head. The SR4 district, I think, is wider. We also have an SR6 that we haven't used yet, but I think that allows slightly narrower, but probably not all the way down to 55.
Actually, I just got it. So SR6 offers minimum width of 70 feet.
Yeah, I understand. So that's why you're seeing so many PUD proposals. It is, a couple thousand feet a foot roadway, at least. So that's an affordability issue. That's a livability, and I think it was a school of thought 20 years ago, and I get it. And when you don't see anybody coming in on that zoning, it's telling you something's not. And it's hard because what do you really say? What is the right answer? I think what you need to consider is just the proportionality. Between the homes and the home site sizes, those kind of things. So I do think we have one of the best planners around. There's a lot of good ones, no doubt. But we think about that. We don't come in here and try to grid it up. We could pack in another 20 or 30 home sites in here easy, but we're not going to come in here and propose that. Because we want a community that people, they just drive in or drive by and go, I want to live here. That's what we want. Easy sale, the best sales tool that we have is just it looks nice and I want to live here. So that's why you come in and you're on Ridge and you look either side, you've got some green right there, And you're on the north, what the nearest home is 200 or 300 feet away. I don't know about my math, but it's not right there.
So we don't have, summarize it? So our ordinances do not allow for this smaller lot size?
At this moment,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
But again, I want to restate, this is something the Housing
Yeah.
Committee has identified. We've talked about
Part
in
of
the
the-
Planning Commission before, but it's just one of those things that I want to be transparent, flag that if you were to go through and dig in our ordinances, you see it. However, it's a point of conversation for us.
Yeah, we would probably want to have that discussion about a PUD, I think, exactly for that reason.
So part of the scope of the comp plan for the consultants is to do basically like an audit of our current ordinance to see what kind of changes they would suggest to kind of update it and bring it into line with what the future land use plan will be. So
I mean, we want to come in here and bring you something you want to see too, not just, like I said, jam it in like that. And I think we're doing pretty good here. At least I hope you think that. But I look at this as, a fairly collaborative process within reason. Obviously, we have to operate a business, and we can only, handle so much load, But, there's a lift station that we'll have to work out with everybody and figure out how that goes. I think there's some fairly productive talks that have already taken place on that, and we'll need to continue that, right, Aaron?
Yeah, when the last developer took their swing at this, we developed the lift station plans to a pretty far along, so they're basically ready to go whenever there's a development that's ready to use it.
Excellent. So, I think I didn't come in here before you, but we were out here talking to Mr. Uphoff probably 3 years ago. It wasn't ripe yet. So, it's good that you're working on it, planning.
Any other questions or comments, feedback?
I guess just with being a national company, can you speak to how you would utilize locals for subcontracting or grading?
I can. It makes a
design?
lot. Makes a lot of sense for locals to be working here, because I don't think anybody wants to drive 2.5 hours to work. So, it's definitely there's going to be a boost, for sure. And if you have referrals, we're happy to get them on our bidders list. Because if you think about it, trucking and everything, it just there's unless you have to do it, locally, but it's all market conditions. What do you need to do is if somebody's available. I think one of the challenges that we've had is some companies we try to hey, you can grow with us. You want to grow, and I'm fine the way I am. Okay. So. But I'd love to. I just wanted to see how you felt about it. I appreciate your inputs, and if you feel like we can manage this together.
I guess that then leads into the next steps. You do concept plan for the whole village board, and then take that, or I guess,
Yeah.
what's the, maybe Aaron
That was
can help too.
Aaron.
Yeah,
is,
we've been wanting the concepts to go to the board as well these days. So that would be the next step. There would have to be a neighborhood plan before any kind of formal, or neighborhood meeting before any kind of formal submittal comes in. Platting is a 2-step process, preliminary plat, final plat. If it goes through as a PUD, that's also a 2-step process that can happen potentially at the same time. And the zoning is kind of wrapped up in that PUD process.
So, would we have to do a comprehensive plan amendment as well as part of this, because it's probably PUD? I assume we probably are.
I would have to look at how it's
Is it ag
written
right now?
exactly.
Yeah, okay. That's not for here, obviously.
Okay.
So thank you for listening and your inputs and everything else. And, any parting words?
No, I think I'd be enthusiastic to see next steps.
Okay. I think we're already talking about a village board meeting date
Okay.
at this point, right?
Yeah, I think probably one of the May meetings.
Yeah, so wish me luck. Us luck. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah,
really
thank
do.
you for coming.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, we are on number 9, future agenda items. I just throw this out here now. Suggestion to move the July meeting to not July 8th, hoping that the commission would entertain moving it to the following week. Please.
That's on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Any other
I have a humbling question. One of my issues is I'm not good with names. And so, of the 3 presentations, we listed 2 of the people's names. If staff could put who's presenting, because I forget their names
On the agendas.
on the agendas or in the presentation packet, because I forget his name already.
Rick and Reed.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. No, thanks for that feedback. Aaron, anything?
Nothing certain. I mean, the sports facility will be back with their site plan at some point, not necessarily next month. I'm not sure what their schedule is. That's probably the biggest one that's out there.
Otherwise, number 10, everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and seconds, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Wow.